They say fear lives in the mind, but sometimes, it escapes. It crawls through the cracks of our sanity, breathes through old walls, and lingers in the places we pretend not to see. Some stories aren't meant to be told. Not because they're lies, but because they're too true. Stories that were erased from reports. Buried under floorboards. Whispered about by those who swore they'd never speak again. Tonight, I'll open those files. 7 of them. 7 cases that should never have been found. You'll hear of voices that spoke after death. Shadows that wore human faces. Homes that refused to stay empty. And cameras that captured what no one should have seen. These stories aren't from the deep web. Or urban legends shared by kids around a campfire. No, these came from police archives, coroner's notes. And the final messages of people who vanished without trace. Before we begin, a warning. If you're watching this alone, make sure your door is locked. Turn off the lights. And if you hear something behind you while I speak, don't turn around. Every story you're about to hear was chosen for a reason. Because they connect, through time, through fear, through you. By the end of this night, you'll see how. Story number 7 begins with a woman who loved the wilderness. And disappeared inside it. Her name was Emma Hale. And the last thing she ever said was captured on her camera. A single word, run. What happened next would become known as the missing camper. Subscribe to Midnight Tales, where the night never sleeps, and turn on bell notifications. Story number 7, The Missing Camper. Her name was Emma Hale. 24 years old. Wildlife blogger. Her channel was called Traillight, a small but loyal audience, the kind that typed gentle comments like, "Stay safe out there." She replied to every one of them. Her last upload was supposed to be another hiking vlog. Solo camping, off-grid for 3 nights. No phone signal, no roads. The thumbnail showed her smiling beside a blue tent. The kind of smile that says nothing bad can happen to me. Hey guys, it's Emma. Just made it to Redwood Ridge. I'll check in tomorrow, if the bears don't eat me first. That was Friday. By Monday, her brother reported her missing. Search teams combed 30 miles of forest. They found her campsite untouched, sleeping bag unrolled. Food sealed, journal open on the word "listen." Next to the journal lay her camera. Battery dead. Lens cracked. The last file on the SD card was 42 minutes long. Midnight, Emma talks to the camera. The forest's so quiet it almost hums, she says. A minute later, she tilts the lens upward. The moon is full. The microphone picks up something. Not footsteps, exactly, but weight shifting in the brush, circling. 007, she whispers, probably deer. 009, silence, except a faint breathing that doesn't match hers. 012, she laughs nervously. Okay, whoever's watching, I'm scaring myself. 018, her flashlight flickers. She mutters a prayer. The camera catches eyes in the dark, 2, then 4, then none. At 022, the lens jerks. She's running. Branches whip the mic. Something's following me, she gasps. 028, she stops. If anyone finds this, I leave my phone by the river. She's crying quietly. I can hear it talking, in my voice. 031, the tent zipper drags. She crawls inside, sets the camera down facing the flap. Outside, rain starts. The fabric trembles. A shadow passes, the flap bulges inward as if someone presses a hand against it. Then another. 5 fingers, too long. 037, the rain stops. But water still drips somewhere inside the tent. You can hear her whisper, "Please go." A shape moves across the lens, her reflection in the tent window. Except, she's not moving. The reflection smiles. 042, black screen. The file ends. No sign of struggle, no body, no tracks. Rangers sealed the area and labeled it an animal attack. Yet once a month, on nights when the moon is full, hikers report the same thing. A woman's voice calling for help between the trees. When they follow it, it stops. And sometimes they find a blue tent, dry and standing, with a camera still recording. That was file 7. But the forest isn't the only place fear survives. Some things follow us home. The next case takes us back to 1956. A small town, a little girl, and a doll that didn't know it was dead. Story number 6, the doll that spoke. The second file came from a place called Brookvale. A quiet town where every house looked the same. Every curtain was white. And every neighbor pretended they'd never heard the stories. It was 1956. The Whitaker family had just moved into number 23, Elm Street. A small 2-story home with a picket fence and a cellar that always smelled of dust and lavender. Inside one of the upstairs rooms, the daughter, Lily, age 7, found something the previous owners left behind. A porcelain doll in a faded blue dress, one glass eye cracked. On the first night, Lily named it Margaret. She set it in the chair by her window and whispered secrets to it before bed. Her parents smiled. Every child talks to dolls. It's how they learn to feel less alone. But the next morning, Lily's mother swore she heard a voice in the nursery. Not Lily's, deeper, older, tired. She opened the door. The girl was still asleep. Yet the doll was turned toward the door. And its cracked eye seemed a little wider. By the third night, Lily began insisting that Margaret talked back. She knows Grandma's song, Lily said. She said Daddy shouldn't have hidden the letter. Her father, Edward, brushed it off as imagination. But later that week, he found the missing letter. One he'd torn up after his mother's funeral. Folded neatly beneath the doll's dress. That was when the laughter stopped in the house. The radio died. Every clock ticked slightly out of rhythm. Edward decided to test what he couldn't explain. He brought home a reel-to-reel recorder. The kind used for family messages. He placed it beside the doll, pressed record, and left the room. For 3 hours, nothing. Then, at exactly midnight, a voice crawled through the tape. Soft, trembling, feminine. Eddie. Why didn't you answer me? The tone wasn't Lily's. It wasn't anyone's he knew. Except one. His mother's. Dead 8 years. Edward played the tape for his wife. She fainted halfway through. When she woke, the doll was gone from the chair. They searched every room, every drawer, every inch of the cellar. Only dust. Only lavender. The next morning, a priest arrived. He sprinkled holy water and whispered Latin prayers until the air turned colder. When he finished, he said something strange. Whatever spoke through that toy wasn't pretending to be human. It was remembering. The family left Brookvale 2 nights later. The house stayed empty for years. Until the bank sold it to a new couple with a young daughter. The movers swore the attic was bare. Except for a single box left in the corner. Wrapped in a baby blanket. Inside was a porcelain doll in a blue dress. One glass eye cracked. And a tape labeled, "For Daddy." A year later, that same doll appeared again. In another child's room. Miles away. And on quiet nights, if you stand beneath her window, you can still hear it. A woman's voice humming a lullaby. Backwards. File 6 closed. But the recordings didn't stop there. In 1959, across the state line, a man found something watching him through his own mirror. He thought reflections were harmless. He was wrong. Subscribe to Midnight Tales, where the night never sleeps. Story number 5, The Man in the Mirror. The fifth file comes from the city. The kind of place where neighbors share walls but never stories. His name was Daniel Kerr. 32 years old, graphic designer, lived alone on the 12th floor of the Holbrook Apartments. A building old enough to creak but cheap enough to stay. Daniel liked routine, same coffee, same bus, same view of his own tired face in the bathroom mirror each morning. He said it grounded him. It reminded him who he was. Until the mirror began to breathe back. It started one Tuesday. A single handprint appearing in the steam after his shower. Larger than his, stretched like wet bone. He wiped it away, laughed, told himself it was condensation patterns, nothing more. The next day, there were two. The prints faced inward. Palms pressed against the glass from the other side. Daniel ran a finger over them. The mirror was cold, too cold for steam. He scraped the silver edge, half expecting to find moisture behind. Instead, he heard a hollow knock. He moved out of the bathroom that night. Brushed his teeth in the kitchen sink. Still, every morning, the prints returned. By the end of the week he borrowed a friend's camera. Set it on a tripod facing the mirror. Pressed record. And went to bed. The apartment was silent except for the clock and the occasional cough from the pipes. When he checked the footage the next morning, the first hour showed nothing. The second. A ripple across the mirror's surface, as if someone exhaled behind the glass. Then a shadow stepped forward. Tall, thin, featureless. It touched the inside of the glass once. The camera feed glitched, white snow. Then Daniel's reflection, alone again. He sent the clip to the building manager. The reply came quick. That mirror was replaced last year after a plumbing job. Shouldn't be hollow. But the word hollow stuck in his head. He pressed his ear to the glass. Faint hum. A breath. Then. A whisper that sounded like his own voice. You're facing the wrong way. Daniel called the police the next morning. 2 officers arrived, skeptical but polite. They tapped the mirror. It echoed. A construction report showed an unlisted service corridor running behind several bathrooms. Maintenance had sealed it years ago, or thought they had. The officers pried the mirror loose. Behind it, a square opening. Big enough for a man to crawl through. Stale air poured out, smelling of iron and mold. The corridor stretched 20 feet, lined with insulation and rotted wood. At the far end. A small room. Mattress. Half-eaten cans of food. A stack of Polaroids clipped to the wall with rusted nails. Every photo showed Daniel. Sleeping. Brushing his teeth. Reading by the window. The earliest one dated 8 months back. The week he moved in. Whoever had lived behind the mirror had been there the whole time. Police swept the space. But the occupant was gone. The only trace left behind was a single fingerprint on the inside of the glass. Larger than Daniel's. And still warm. They found a bed. And photographs of him sleeping. Every night for months. Holbrook Apartments removed every mirror after that. But tenants still complain of breathing sounds. When they shower. File 5 closed. Yet reflection is a door we never mean to open. And some doors, once opened, keep looking back. The next record came from a different kind of darkness. Not a mirror, but a case file. One that should have been destroyed. The unfinished case file. Story number 4, The Unfinished Case File. Fear doesn't always live in the shadows. Sometimes, it hides in the paperwork. File 4 is known among officers as the unfinished case file. 2007, a detective named Leonard Hayes was assigned to a series of disappearances around the West End of Millerton. He'd worked 23 years on the force, known for his method, his memory, and his obsession with closure. He never left a case open. Until this one. The case began like any other. A missing woman, 31, last seen leaving a corner grocery store after dark. No struggle, no witness, no vehicle footage. Only a receipt with the timestamp 11:59 p.m. Hayes logged the evidence, filed the report, and tucked it neatly into an archive box labeled M017. A week later, a second woman vanished. Same street. Same time. Same initials. Hayes started keeping a notebook, a personal journal. He said it helped him think like the missing. He wrote each night after shift. "The city sleeps too quiet," one entry reads. "Someone is rearranging the silence." The deeper he searched, the stranger it became. Case photos misplaced, tape reels duplicated. One folder contained a letter, typed, and signed. It read, "Detective Hayes, you're asking the wrong questions. Try looking at yourself." He dismissed it as a prank. But that night, he received a call. No caller ID. The voice on the other end whispered, "You found the letter." Then silence. He reported the incident. But records show the audio file he submitted was blank. Completely silent. A few days later, his partner noticed something. The handwriting in the witness statements didn't match the people interviewed. It matched Hayes. Perfectly. Hayes swore he'd never seen those papers before. But his fingerprints were on every page. He requested to review all evidence personally. So the clerk gave him the master archive key. Late one night, under the cold hum of the fluorescent lights, he unlocked the file room. The one room no one visited after hours. He said the smell hit first. Old dust, stale coffee. And something faintly metallic. Like rusted nails soaked in rainwater. The boxes towered to the ceiling. Labels curling from age. He found M017. Pulled it down. Opened the lid. Inside. Photographs, cassette tapes, and a sealed evidence bag. The first photo was of the missing woman, smiling in daylight. The second was of Hayes himself, taken from outside his own apartment window. He turned on the tape recorder. The reel clicked, hissed. Then, his own voice filled the room. Evidence log, March 12th. Subject located. Case not to be closed. He froze. That wasn't possible. That date was 10 years before he'd joined the force. He replayed it. The same voice. The same inflection. Only one difference. From that night forward, Hayes refused to enter the archive alone. He claimed someone had rewritten his reports while he slept. One morning, a janitor found the word "finished" carved into Hayes's desk. The knife was still stuck in the wood. His journal pages were blank. Every single one. Internal Affairs opened an investigation. No foul play. No evidence of forced entry. But the archived case file, M017, was gone. In its place, a single photograph. Hayes, sitting at the archive desk. Staring at something behind the camera. They confirmed it wasn't a still from security footage. There was no camera facing that direction. The department psychiatrist wrote in her notes. Detective Hayes shows signs of dissociation. Claims the file rewrites itself. Her final line before discharge. The subject believes he is the case. Hayes resigned the next day. He packed a single box, left his badge on the desk, and never returned. But the calls didn't stop. His wife reported that every few nights, their home phone would ring at 2:47 a.m. A faint breathing on the line. When traced, the signal led back to the police archive. To the same desk he'd once worked at. A desk that's been empty ever since. He resigned the next day. But the voice kept calling his home phone for years. Some cases never close. Some detectives never leave. And somewhere in that frozen room, a typewriter still finishes the stories we start. File 4 ends where memory begins to lie. But the next record isn't about what we remember. It's about what refuses to die. A story buried in concrete and sound. The echoing basement. Story number 3, the hospital basement. Some buildings die, but refuse to stay buried. This is case 3, the hospital basement. The footage you're about to hear was never released to the public. It was recovered from an SD card found in an abandoned psychiatric facility just outside Brookhaven. The explorers called themselves the Urban Pulse. 4 friends chasing clicks, thrill, and the unknown. But that night, they found something that was still working. Okay guys, we're inside. That's Jamie, the group's leader. The recording shows their flashlights slicing through dust-filled corridors, the faint glow reflecting off cracked tiles and empty gurneys. Another voice, Sasha, whispering nervously. I swear I heard something moving below us. Laughter follows, but the camera shakes. In the distance, a faint ding, like an elevator reaching its floor. The Brookhaven Asylum was shut down in 1984 after multiple patient disappearances and a fire that gutted the West Wing. According to city records, it had 3 floors. But on the footage, the elevator panel shows 4. The bottom button is scratched, faded. But you can still make out the letters, B2. Below the basement. Yo, we gotta check that out, one voice says, half laughing. The others hesitate. But clicks mean courage, and curiosity always wins. They descend for 43 seconds. Too long for a normal building. The camera tilts toward the floor counter. B1 flickers past. Then B2. The light stays steady, though the power grid of the hospital had been dead for decades. The footage shows a long corridor lined with locked doors. Signs still read, observation, isolation, records. Every door numbered 2000-something, numbers that don't exist in hospital design. One door near the end reads, active ward. And below it, freshly written in marker, staff only. Intercom, distorted, welcome back. Jamie. That's my name, Jamie whispers. The group backs away. The intercom hums again. Please proceed to evaluation room 2. They freeze. There are no visible speakers. No power source. But the red recording light blinks on in the hallway security camera. Let's go back, Sasha says. The elevator doors have sealed shut. No response to the button presses. Then, a door at the far end swings open by itself. The light beyond it flickers like a heartbeat. The camera pans toward it. There's a figure standing inside. White coat. Mask. Still as stone. Sir. Jamie calls. No answer. The figure slowly tilts its head. The intercom crackles again. Patient response, uncooperative. Then, the lights go black. When the flashlight comes back on, the figure is gone. The hallway appears longer now. Stretching beyond where it should. The elevator is gone too. Only a blank wall remains. One of them starts sobbing. The others shout over each other. The intercom whispers once more. Code white. Containment breach in progress. The camera lens shakes. Catching glimpses of peeling walls. Rusted gurneys. A flickering sign that now reads. Operating, current. Then, footsteps. Not theirs. Heavy boots, moving closer, faster. The last clear frame shows a shadow crossing the lens, tall, elongated. Carrying what looks like a clipboard. Then static. Police arrived 2 days later, after the group's car was found idling outside the gates. The building's power was still off. No lights, no working elevator. Yet deep inside the main wing, the officers found a hospital intercom system still wired to an auxiliary generator. It had been modified to run recordings on a loop. But every voice on those recordings matched one of the missing explorers. "Welcome back, Jamie. Proceed to evaluation room 2. Code white." Their voices, repeating in perfect tone. The SD card recovered from the scene ended mid-scream. The final seconds captured a faint reflection in a cracked observation mirror. One of the explorers, Sasha, standing behind the camera, expression blank. Her lips moved, mouthing something. "Don't stop recording. The footage ends there." No bodies were ever found. But here's the part that makes this story stay up at night. When the police reviewed the footage in the station's media lab, one frame froze, glitched for a moment. The reflection of one explorer looked straight into the camera lens. And smiled. They say hospitals heal. But this one remembered. And somewhere below ground, an elevator still waits. For anyone curious enough to press the button that shouldn't exist. That was the third file. But if you think the worst is over, the next story is not about death. It's about what death leaves behind. Story number 2, The Whispering Portrait. Subscribe to Midnight Tales, where the night never sleeps. Story number 2, The House on Ashwood Lane. Some houses never stop living, even after the people inside are gone. This one sits on the corner of Ashwood Lane. A quiet street of trimmed lawns, porch lights, and neighbors who wave but never talk for long. Number 43, a 2-story colonial with white shutters and a willow tree in the yard. The house looks ordinary. Until you know what happened there. The Carsons moved in during the fall of 2018. A young couple, Mark and Lila, and their daughter, Emily. I remember the moving truck backing into the drive. The little girl chasing a red balloon through the grass. They waved at me that first day. It was the last time I saw all 3 of them together. A month later, the lights in the Carson house started flickering every night at 9:15. Same time. Same rhythm. A short pulse, a pause, then 3 long blinks. I thought it was a wiring issue. Until I realized the pattern spelled something in Morse code. Help. I told myself I was imagining things. People see patterns in chaos all the time, right? But then, I started hearing noises from their backyard after midnight. A faint scraping sound. Like someone dragging a shovel through gravel. Once, I looked out my window and saw a single light moving in their attic. The next morning, the curtains were drawn. On October 21st. No one had seen the Carsons for 3 days. Their car was still in the driveway. Mail piled on the porch. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the window ledge. Still warm when the police arrived. I watched from my porch as the officers went inside. No forced entry. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just silence. Dinner plate still on the table. Chicken, peas, mashed potatoes. All cold. As if time had stopped mid-bite. One officer described it like this. The house feels paused. Upstairs, they found Emily's room. Toys neatly arranged. Bed made. And the words, "Good night, Daddy," drawn on the fogged window. But it hadn't rained that day. The last thing they checked was the attic. The access door was half open. One of the officers climbed the ladder. He stopped halfway up. "Do you smell that?" he said. "Something metallic. Something warm." They never said what they found up there. Only that the attic floor was covered in dust. Except for one set of footprints. Fresh. Too small to be an adult. News spread fast. The official report called it a disappearance without evidence. The case went cold. The house sat empty for 3 years. Until one spring morning in 2021. Mrs. Klein from across the street called me. Said she'd seen someone in the upstairs window. "A girl," she said. She waved. I didn't believe her, not at first. But that evening, curiosity got the better of me. I walked across the street and looked up. There it was. The flicker of movement behind the curtain. A hand, pale and small. Pressed against the glass. Then it waved. Once. Slowly. I called the police. They searched again. No one inside. Dust untouched. Dinner table still set. As if waiting for the next meal. But here's the thing. One of the plates was clean. Freshly washed. A new family moved in a few months later. The Harrisons. They didn't last long. The father complained about hearing footsteps above the attic at night. The mother said she'd wake up to find every window open. No matter how many she locked before bed. Their little boy stopped sleeping in his room after he told her. The girl in the window keeps asking me to play. The Harrisons left after 7 weeks. The next tenants, same story. Every one of them reported the same thing. Someone waving from the upstairs window when no one's home. The city has tried to demolish the house 3 times. Every time the work begins. The power fails. Tools break. Or someone gets hurt. The last demolition order was cancelled after a contractor fell through the attic floor. Into nothing. His body was never recovered. They say at night. If you walk past 43, Ashwood Lane. And glance up too long. You might see her still there. The little girl in the window. Hand pressed to the glass. Eyes hollow with waiting. And if you wave back. The curtain moves. Just slightly. Every tenant since reports the same thing. Someone waving from the window. When no one's home. That was the second file. But if you thought ghosts were the worst thing to haunt a home. The final story will prove otherwise. Because what waits in the dark next. Doesn't haunt the living. It feeds on them. Story number 1, The Last Broadcast. Good evening, you're watching WZD Channel 6 News at 11. I'm Daniel Reeves. Tonight's top story. The city prepares for its annual Fall Festival weekend. Sorry, we're experiencing some interference from the tower feed. Chuckles nervously. We'll fix that shortly. As I was saying, authorities remind residents to expect heavy traffic on 32 Maple Drive, female, age 27. Alright, it seems we've lost our feed again. We'll move to weather. Sorry, folks. I'm just being told we're receiving calls. Something about a broadcast that isn't ours. You just said my address. 32 Maple Drive. What kind of sick joke is this? Ma'am, we didn't, we're not airing anything of that sort. This is the live evening news. No. I heard it. A man's voice. Said, female, 27. That's me. If anyone's experiencing technical issues, please disregard the interference. We'll resume after. Victim confirmed. 11:02 p.m. What did it just say? We've confirmed reports that emergency crews are responding to an incident at 32 Maple Drive. Details are still developing. Ladies and gentlemen, the interference you heard earlier appears to have predicted that event. This can't be real. Who's patching this feed? Next. 119, Harbor Street. Male. 43, time, 11:21. Kill the feed. Pull the plug. If you're watching this, stay inside. Lock your doors. Police are being notified. They can't trace the source, sir. It's not from our transmitter. It happened again. This footage is recovered from the final broadcast of WZED News. October 12, 1989. We've been receiving transmissions predicting deaths, all within minutes of broadcast. Police confirm 4 incidents, all accurate, down to the second. The signal isn't coming from any known frequency. Engineers say it's originating from our own tower. There's something else. Between transmissions, we can hear something faint. Keep watching. We've gone off air 3 times tonight. Each time, the signal restarts itself. We can't shut it down. The next name just appeared. Funny. Guess I'm next, huh? Hello. You shouldn't have watched. Who are you? If anyone can hear me, turn off your television. Whatever this is, it's using the signal. I see it now. In the glass. Oh God. The final transmission ended at 11:53 p.m., precisely the time predicted. The camera remained live for 32 minutes. During that time, the broadcast tower continued transmitting. Without power. When police arrived at the WZD station, they found no sign of Daniel Reeves. The studio lights were shattered. All monitors displayed a single line of text. We interrupt this life to bring you another. Authorities traced the rogue transmission to a signal tower 12 miles outside the city. It had been decommissioned. In 1973, the station was demolished the following year. But residents still report hearing faint Morse code on Channel 6 every October 12th. And if you tune in at exactly 11:53 p.m. sometimes, the news still plays. She never left the forest. The doll's still talking. He's behind the glass. Play it again, detective. I can hear my name over the intercom. Someone's waving from the window. Good evening. I'm Daniel Reeves. 7 stories, 7 warnings. Each one told to be forgotten. But stories like these don't fade, they follow. Maybe you paused the video once. Maybe you skipped ahead. But something stayed with you, didn't it? The missing camper still calls for help every full moon. The doll's porcelain smile cracks a little wider each time you remember her name. The man in the mirror might not be your reflection anymore. And somewhere, in an old tower humming with static, someone still says your address. 7 stories. 7 chances to turn away. Yet here you are, still listening. Some tales end when the credits roll. Ours begins when the lights go out. Tell me, which story followed you home tonight? If you made it through the darkness, you belong here. Subscribe to Midnight Tales, where the night never sleeps. We'll be waiting for you next midnight. Still watching? You're braver than most. Which story haunted you most, number 1, number 3, or number 7? Comment the number. If you dare.